I don't really know my grandparents very well, but that's because I grew up in the States, and they remained in Tokyo when we left. When he passed away, I got the news via FaceTime. My mom was in tears because it was so sudden. It was like, just kind of numb to the whole thing, basically. College, making sure I could work to handle the rising debt I was acquiring in San Francisco. Their deaths didn't impact as much as I guess it should have. And she showed me the obituary. Hikaru Watsuna, age 76. It's like looking at the picture of a stranger. How was I supposed to grieve? He had never made himself a part of my life. Truthfully, I wasn't paying attention until Ma asked for my dorm room number. That's quite an odd request, I told her. She told me there was a few things that he wanted me to have from the old country. What is it? Old sweaters, something? I asked. Ma shrugged. Clearly, she was still struggling with tragedy, and I didn't wish to cause her any more hardship, so I just gave her the info. I thought nothing more of it. So 4 days later, a package arrived, covered in postage from all across the world. Grandfather had certainly gone through a lot of effort to send whatever was inside. I placed it in my firm mattress. I used my car keys to open the little package, and there was this, I don't know, there was wrapping paper inside with a note, and it was written in grandfather's Japanese, so I placed it aside, deciding to translate it later. I unwrapped the item inside the box. Some kind of children's storybook, written entirely in ancient Japanese. It's probably even older than the kind that grandfather was familiar with. It wasn't too heavy, but clearly it was fragile. I immediately wondered why he had sent me something like this. Placing the book down carefully, I got on my phone and used Google to translate his handwritten note to the best of my ability. I know it's shameful that I've never learned my mother's tongue, but honestly, there was never really a need for it. They said, "My dear Akio-chan, I am old and dying. I miss the days of my childhood when I can hold you and bounce you on my knee, tell you these fanciful stories, and your eyes would twinkle. You remember nothing of this, of course, taken from me far too young. Ever since I have been unable to reach you and tell you there is more to this fable than meets the eye. I give it to you so that you may learn the truth about your family's heritage. Do not tell anyone, or all will be lost." It was signed at the bottom. He even included a thumbprint in ink as a seal, perhaps his way of verifying that he really did send it. The note confounded me more than the book. I didn't have any memory of life in Japan, nor was I aware that my grandfather had been trying to contact me for years. I instinctively started to dial my mom, but then I looked at the translation again. I don't know. Grandpa sounded paranoid, perhaps delusional. I didn't really know what his mental state was at the end, but if there was some truth to the words. I hadn't spoken to Ma in a while, since coming to the States. While I felt she loved me, this was all very new and strange. Maybe it was a sixth sense or something, but I didn't finish the call. I instead decided to take the storybook to one of my professors. Dr. Calhide majored in archaeology, and when I explained what I had, he was instantly intrigued and agreed to meet after class the next day. When he saw the book, he was immediately impressed and told me that even without starting to do carbon dating, it was clear that this book was over 200 years old. He seemed shocked that my grandfather had chosen to not donate it to a museum, and a little disappointed that I decided to hang on to it for now. "How long do you think it would take to translate?" I asked. He told me that his specific studies couldn't help, but maybe if he took a few snapshots of different pages, he might be able to get some of his colleagues to help out. And I thought that was harmless. We chose a few of the pages that had more text on them than illustrations, and once I was finished, I decided to call my girlfriend and go out to dinner. So out of caution for the book's value, I stopped by my dorm. I placed it in an old safe, one that had been handed down from another relative. Ironic. These two antiques were now guarding one another, I thought. Well, during our meal, I told her the interesting find. She was in awe of this story, right? Her first reaction was to suggest that I attempt to sell it. I knew that if it really was old, it could be enough to cover my college, perhaps even have some leftovers. I mean, it was a tempting thought, but I don't know, it made me feel guilty. Come on, it's an heirloom. Besides, Grandpa seemed to think that it would help me learn more about my family's history. That intrigued her even more, especially because she was wondering if it was true why my mother hadn't already told me the story herself. I'm not sure yet. I'm sure it'll amount to nothing, though. Perhaps just a harmless fairy tale. I laughed. That night, I was surprised to find that my professor had already emailed me the first parts of the story. Immediately, I began to read. It was this interesting account from all the way back in the 7th century. The Star Princess. Just as the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, the great warriors protect our land from all evil, great and far. Namaro Watsune was one such samurai, of the lowest family in the remotest part of the kingdom. I paused as I reread the name of the warrior in the book. Watsune. My family name. I kept reading, slightly more interested now as the story told of what happened to Watsune. One day, while in the midst of a duel with his aging father, Namaro saw something in the distant sky. It was a shooting star, he thought at first. Then he saw that it was a falling boat, a chariot from the heavens. I saw the artistic depiction of the strange ship that my ancestors claimed to have seen, and noted that the professor claimed it bore a striking resemblance to other ancient works, particularly a drawing from 1844. He sent me the link, and I did realize there was a bit of a similarity, except the one in the story looked more like an egg than a spinning top. Alongside the link was a word, Utsorobune. The email ended with a promise that he would continue the translation tomorrow. Meanwhile, I did some interesting research of my own, discovering that the strange ship was considered an old legend from the Kono tribe, and related to a fisherman from Gogo Island. That was a name I recognized. It was the place my mother grew up near. Grandfather claimed our family had been there for generations. My phone rang, disturbing my research. It's my mother. Akia, are you awake at this hour? Her voice sounded a bit concerned. I'm all right, Ma. What's wrong? Why are you calling? I asked. Nakia called me. She said that you found something interesting in Pa's things, Ma said. Now, for a moment I froze, realizing that I had never considered my girlfriend would contact her. It's nothing, Ma, I mumbled. Akio, don't lie to me. A mother can always tell when her son is lying. It was a book, wasn't it? How'd she know that? I said nothing, and I heard her sigh heavily on the phone. Your grandfather has been obsessed with that for ages. I really didn't want you roped into his nonsense, she whispered. Is that why you kept him from contacting me? I asked. There was a long pause, long enough for me to suspect that there was more to the story than she was withholding from me. The book's meaningless, Akio. Don't waste your time with it, she told me. I paused. A few things felt wrong about the entire situation. So you called me up at 1 o'clock in the morning to warn me to just get rid of a children's storybook? She didn't answer this time, so I prodded her and remarked, What exactly is so interesting about it, Ma? It should have been burned long ago. Then she hung up the phone. I laid against the headboard of my bed, a bit baffled by her words. Was she frightened by what I might learn? Or was there something else going on I didn't understand? Somehow, despite those troubling thoughts, I managed to sleep. When I did, I dreamed of my ancestor from that ancient story. I was on a war-torn battlefield. I could see many warriors dressed in the shining armor of the samurais of old, iron and leather, and painted with familiar clan colors from Japan. The warriors were all fighting each other to the death in a war that made the ground red with blood. Natsuno, though, barely had anything to protect himself with, and an army was coming down to destroy his home. All of his traditional armor had been stripped, and it seemed like he had nothing to stop his strange enemy that pushed through the land like a flood. To his side, I saw a strange young girl with pale skin, dark hair. She had eyes that were as bright as the sun, and she was whispering something to him, but I didn't understand. His long katana was glowing with blood, filled with twinkling stars as he closed his eyes and put on his helmet. He turned his blade to me, his eyes now as black as the demon's. The stars awaken. Behold the darkest day, he said, as he ran his blade straight through my belly. I awoke with a cold sweat and instinctively grabbed my stomach, pulling my sheets back to look down and make sure I wasn't injured. Just a dream. But it felt so real. My laptop was still on, and my professor had emailed me the next part of the story. Meet with me once you finish. A few of my colleagues are interested in learning more. A note attached to the translation said. I opened the PDF and felt a chill run down my spine. There was an illustration of an ancient battle, of the Kono clan against an army of shadows from the sky, demons that were coming to kill a young woman that matched the girl in my dreams. What had happened in that tale made me begin to question my reality. Natsuno was not strong or brave, but the Star Princess gave him both. Promises of a future kingdom that would rule all of the kingdoms of Earth. They were in love, but the star demons did not approve. They sought her blood, and the blood of the entire clan. Natsuno would have to face them alone to protect his family. Natsuno was given the powers of the stars and struck down millions of the demons with a single blade. He did not falter, but as a result of his strength, he lost his mortal life. As the last demon tried to strike him down, Natsuno was given a final task: to give birth to his son, sinless and pure. The depiction of the man bursting open and a child hovering and glowing from his bowels didn't make this feel like it was a children's story, but rather a gory war story with a strange supernatural ending. Had this been what would happen next in the dream? Why had I depicted these scenes so vividly in my subconscious when I'd never even seen them? Reading the stories felt like I was opening a door in my mind. Some memory I never remembered being planted there. At the end of the PDF, my professor reminded me to meet him that afternoon for more of a discussion. His urgency told me there had been something else he'd uncovered, and my troubled dreams made me eager to find out what it could be. I met him at the library alongside 3 men I didn't know. I was actually surprised when I saw that they were all Japanese, and instinctively I gave them the customary bow of the culture. Akio, I'm glad you could make it. These are associates I've contacted about your find. They came as soon as they heard of its importance, my professor said excitedly. For a moment, I panicked. I had hoped that he wouldn't involve anyone else, but these men all seemed dignified and reasonable. So I sat with them as they began to talk. They told me that they had determined that the book my grandfather had in his possession was from 1805, probably crafted directly on Gogo Island, the first man said. The second man was a bit older and coughed into his hand. As I'm sure you no doubt have realized, this is a priceless artifact that belongs to the people of Japan, who would like to return it to Tokyo immediately. There would be a small finder's fee. After all, Hikaru ensured that this story would be able to endure the test of time, the third man said. I paused, my eyes flickering for a moment. "What did you say?" I asked. The first man repeated the offer, saying they wished to offer compensation for finding this national treasure. No, not that. "You mentioned my grandfather's name. How did you know that?" I asked. The three men exchanged glances, and even my professor seemed a bit puzzled, asking if I had ever met these men before. And those were the last words he ever spoke. The second man had taken out a gun and shot him straight between the eyes. The sound was so loud it made my ears ring. In such shock, I didn't realize they were pointing the weapon at me next. The man was mouthing words and shouting, but I couldn't hear him at first. My fight-or-flight instinct took over, and I kicked the table up, pushing the three men backwards. As I looked down at my professor's dead eyes, I mumbled an apology and ran. Immediately, I could hear the faint rumble of their feet. They were pursuing me. I ran to the second floor of the library, weaving between the aisles until I found a broom closet and hid within. The shuffling of feet eventually subsided, and I knew they were gone. After a few more moments, my racing heart began to calm, and I looked down at my shirt that was now covered in my professor's blood. What was so important about that book? So important that they would want to kill for it. Once I left the library, I felt that I had a target on my back, and I didn't even know why. Those men were hunting for me, and I needed to get to my professor's office and find the rest of the notes that he had managed to make. I made my way to campus that evening, called Nakia to help me. I promised her a cut of the reward, lying, saying I was going to sell the book to a museum. "So it's really worth a lot, huh?" she asked as we went down the corridor towards the professor's office. "More than you could possibly imagine. Now, can you shimmy the lock or not?" The school was mostly empty of students this hour, but I felt the need to be paranoid. Thankfully, she was able to get it open in only a few minutes. She asked me what we were supposed to be looking for as we flipped on the lights. I scanned the room and saw a few pages of notes on his desk, rifling through them. Then I noticed a few interesting news articles. The headlines made me pause. Doomsday Cult, responsible for death of 13 in subway incident. Leader of cult claims divine judgment is given from above. End of world by 1997. Last members of cult executed for crimes. Some suspect splinter groups still exist to await the return. I wasn't sure what all of it meant, but I saw that he had made a small board that connected claims by this cult leader to the story of the Otsurobune. Able to float on air, seeing visions of heavenly women that were giving him direct guidance, and this beast of biblical revelation, said to be an invasion that only he could smite with the power of his ancestors. My ancestors, I realized, as I finally found the notes of Natsuno's story. The child, the son of a man and of gods, was hidden from the world. The Star Princess claimed that his lineage would bring about the end of the world. When the return brought him into the light again, and she would come back as well. There was a depiction of the ancestor, glowing in an ethereal way, along with a heavenly woman watching over him. For some reason, it made me feel very uneasy to look down at the ancient translation. I mean, what did it all mean for me? "Akio, isn't this your grandmother?" I heard my girlfriend ask, as she held up a picture of the trial of the cult leader from a Tokyo newspaper. In the background of the court, I saw Hikaru. 2018. Only a few years ago. Why was he there? Nakia asked. I'm not sure, but I think I know who can give me the answers, I said, as I realized that going to my mother was the only option I had. Nakia, you gotta come with me, okay? This isn't safe, I told her. She seemed frightened by the idea that a mere children's book could hold such power. People have been killed already because of it. I think it's telling a dark secret, and they don't want it to come to light, I explained. She pushed me away, clearly troubled. She told me we should destroy it, and let it die alongside my grandfather. I was surprised by her boldness, but the idea did make a certain amount of sense. Maybe the people that were coming after me would stop if we destroyed it. Meet at my house tonight. We can burn it and just forget all about this, she said as she kissed me. I grabbed the notes from my professor's desk and rushed home to get the book. I wasn't sure it was going to be safe anywhere until it was gone. As I traveled, I felt constantly followed or watched. Suddenly, everyone around me no longer seemed trustworthy. As I traveled to Nakia's house, I listened to more notes related to the Star Princess, and it troubled me. Many claim that ancestors from the clan related to Natsuno are descended from the Star Child itself, the warrior that was born from heaven that would cause the end of the world. The Star Princess, some believers testify, still walks among us immortal, and there are shadows among men that do her will. The demons from heaven, some theorists claim, were her own people. They saw the danger of the child, the danger of her arrival in the Otsurabune. Her ancestors are a threat to all mankind and must be eliminated, some extremists have proclaimed. The words were stunning to read, if they were true. Did this explain why those men wanted me dead? Was Natsuno a harbinger of evil? And if Grandfather had learned the secret, why hasn't he tried to stop this ages ago? What had changed in the recent years? As soon as I got there, Nakia pulled me inside, asking if I had the book. Yeah, but honestly, I'm not sure about destroying it anymore. It feels like this has more secrets than just my family, I told her. Nakia disagreed, insisting it would only bring bad luck, and tried to snatch my pack from my hands. I asked her how she could be so quick to destroy an important artifact. What I've read might change the shape of history as we know it, I told her. She apologized, admitted she was just nervous to lose me, especially after what happened at the library. She promised not to pressure me, as we sat down and I examined the last few chapters of the book. Without a translator, it was hard to guess what was happening. I saw the strange dark creatures from the stars swarming across the surface of the earth, and I saw the glowing woman from ancient times emerging from the ground. Except this time it was plainly obvious the demons were coming from her. So, she had become their host, or she was the cause of the problem all along. I think I might have gotten the story wrong. I think this visitor from ancient times infected mankind, waiting to spread her evil across generation after generation, I whispered. I looked up to see what my girlfriend had to say, but she was gone into the next room. She insisted I come to bed with her and pulled me close, kissing me tenderly. I guessed it had been the recent string of events that caused the sudden passion, but only a few moments later I was proven wrong. She was reaching for something in her cabinet, and at first I thought it was a condom, and then I saw a syringe filled with a black pus. I fumbled backwards as she grabbed it and realized this rendezvous was never about helping me at all. Who are you? Are you involved in this too? Holding the syringe close to her body, her voice changed and she claimed that she needed to kill me, to protect my children. As long as the heirs of Natsuno were alive, her prodigy were a danger. She rolled her eyes back and she began to glow. Her hair turned white, her body burst with stars and strange tendrils of fire. She was the Star Princess. She told me she had hunted me and my family for ages. trying to find every last member, kill every last one. The only ones that still knew of her secret. And then she lunged to attack. She was so strong. I doubt even 10 men could hold her down. Somehow I managed to break free and ran towards the living room, grabbing the book and running to the door. Nakia was right behind me, using her superhuman powers. She pulled me down, she slammed me to the ground, and I was sure that I would likely die in the next few moments if I didn't act quickly. Her teeth were dripping poison and burning my skin, and in that brief moment I had an opening. I managed to push my body against hers, and the syringe plunged into her neck. I injected that poison, and her eyes turned from a glowing to black and dead. She collapsed on the ground beside me as I stumbled and ran from the house. I haven't stopped running ever since. The book. The book, it's so valuable, but not just money. I believe it reveals a secret invasion to our planet. And my girlfriend is proof. I don't think the Star Princess will be dead for long if the prophecy is to turn out true. And now, as I travel in hopes of finding others who know more and can help me, I fear that I trust no one. The final notes from Calhide told me this much. My assumption of the end of the tale was correct. Natsuno was a hybrid. But the demons of the stars were born of the princess to do her bidding and to hunt down this new land and claim it. Not just the Kona tribe, but perhaps others, even millions, could be infected with this alien menace. I mean, it's been hundreds of years. I realized as I reconsidered destroying the book, but I can't. It might be the only thing keeping me alive. The secret is too powerful to remain quiet. As a warning to others, I think it's best to realize the people of this earth are not all human. Ancient evil walks among us, and only my family has the key to possibly stopping them, if we even can. If we haven't already been found out. And I say this because I also traveled to my ma, realizing that despite my grandfather's warning, I needed to learn more. And when I arrived at her house, I found that she had experienced a break-in. She had been murdered. Smelling her rotting flesh and seeing how these inhuman creatures tore her apart will be scarred into my memory for as long as I live. But it will also serve as a warning I can't let my guard down. This book. The book must be protected until I find a way to stop them. And until then, I run. I run and I hide, and I suggest everyone that knows this secret do the same. Hey everyone, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I want to tell you thank you so much for watching tonight's video or for listening to tonight's episode of the podcast. Also, hitting the subscribe button on that podcast and or that YouTube video channel, because whenever you do that, it helps me be alive, which I very much appreciate, because if I'm not alive, And finally, as always, I want to thank everybody who is on my Patreon list. Especially, I want to give a huge thank you to Triller Tier Jackal, Brian Figueroa, Ethan Leon, Polaris Prospect X, Lake Rattler, Viceroy Scorn, Disciple, Delaney Melton, Strategy, Wolf, Jameson, John G. Luna, SullyMan, Juan Mendoza, Rock Bottom Smasher, Elias Naharo, Brandon Mendoza, Sneck, Brimstone Pendulum, Caltuna, William Wellington, Scruffy the Janitor, Victoria Schwartz, Victoria Miles, Aaron, Emma, Kemza, Brenda Crow, Elijah Munson, LaQueda Canizales, MrCreepyPasta Peebus Pleaser, Travis, Smiley Psychotic, Richard Sundell, Buddha B, Dante Kinkade, SimbasBloodyMojo, Mephistopheles, CursepoxPrimarch, M, Jettis Pet, VerbalHorror, Kearns, Mike, himbojerry, CrusaderChocobo, Corbin Dallas, Estabine, Our Minute Seconds Time, Seclude, Salty Surprise, Red Shadow Cat, Turtleman, Mr. Marcus Splits, Dirt Diver 030, Voice of Sand, Psychomel, Melted Lake, Tally Sue, Cronut 509, Stricken, Freddy Krueger, Hazy Nephew, Tommy Wall, Tommy Walters, Acid System, Sky Harbor, Nico Kyle, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, Corey X Kenshin, Diana Kraus, Jordan Humble, a man of many names, and every single one of you that's down there in the description, every single one of you that is able to give even $1, man, I cannot thank you all enough. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys are wonderful. You really do make my life easier, and I appreciate it greatly. To all of you out there, have a wonderful evening and sweet dreams.